Now, all eyes will be on Osaka, Japan this week as leaders from 19 countries and the European Union meet for the G20 Summit to discuss a range of topics.
However, the spotlight will be on whether US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping can strike a deal to end or postpone the trade war.
Observers say a protracted trade war could impact Singapore, and Brandon Tanoto tells us more.
It's a meeting between two powerhouses. US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping are expected to meet each other on Saturday, since trade talks broke off in May. But now the recent Hong Kong protests and US-Iran tensions have been thrown into the mix. Observers have outlined two possible outcomes. The ideal one, where talks resume, paving a way forward in negotiating a deal. The undesirable one, where there's no consensus and further tariffs are launched. That, economists say, could weigh on an open economy like Singapore's.
There would be fears that Singapore's exports could have another leg down and the recovery process is retarded for much further out. So these will, I think, translate into a weak manufacturing sector. Mechanically, there will be a downgrade to expectations of growth forecasts, so on and so forth. And the next worry, and the real bigger worry, is whether this will translate into pressures on the labour market, on the job market.
As such, it's vital that Singapore protects the multilateral system that has underpinned its growth all these years. Singapore has been a consistent advocate of multilateralism and free trade. Now, the Republic has urged the rest of Asia to redouble its efforts in maintaining a rules-based multilateral trading system, and at the same time step up and take greater responsibility in shaping a new and stable global order. Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong will be present at the summit and hopes the meeting can set things in a positive direction. But trust between US and China is key, and that will have to start at the top. Mr. Lee suggested that they can begin by agreeing on easier issues like trade before moving on to weightier ones. Although Singapore is not a G20 member, the country is invited in its capacity as a representative of the Global Governance Group, an informal grouping of 30 small and medium-sized countries. Observers say this makes Singapore a perfect candidate to explain the opportunities that exist within ASEAN, as well as bring forward the broader issues and risks the region faces.
Singapore is an example. It's an example of a country which succeeded massively from the global trading rules. So it can actually persuade other countries that they can follow a similar path in economic development. Maybe these countries banding together can nudge the big giants to actually peacefully resolve many of these matters.
Singapore also hopes to substantially conclude the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership by the end of this year. Mr. Lee had acknowledged that missing the current deadline would make it progressively harder to complete the trade pact and momentum may be lost. All in, observers say Singapore's presence will allow the country to advance its interests on issues like finance and trade, as well as cement its position as a leading financial hub and global Asian node.